thoroughly, properly, so that we can affect positive change. What is sexual abuse? Sexual abuse is any unwanted, unconsensual sexual contact that is made between you and somebody else. Sexual abuse can also be of a coercive nature. It can also be where there's no contact. Sadly, many of us come from ethnic backgrounds where those conceptions are not always easily accepted. Sexual abuse also comes in other forms where assaults are made against children. Sexual abuse can also be made against animals. And as absurd as that might sound to many, it actually takes place. The fact that these topics don't sit comfortably with people, or even are strange to some people, or some members of our community, is all the more reason why we need to talk about them. I do find it very difficult at times when raising this topic within certain communities. One, because we don't openly talk about sexuality within the Afro-Caribbean community, also within many Asian communities. To do so is seen as disrespectful. Therefore, many incidents of abuse within our communities get swept under the carpet, don't get talked about, remain in the dark. So in summary, that is what sexual abuse is.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Hi, hello everyone. I am a survivor of sexual violence act that was perpetrated against me when I was 8 years old. So I know from a child's perspective, it left me with post-traumatic stress disorder and other abuses that I endured. This happened in an era where I was threatened by the person not to tell that they would kill my grandma.
Diana, let's discuss to understand what it is. We'll go into those areas.
So there was nobody to tell. Perpetrated against a child where you had no one to tell, there was no support. So I had to endure, I had to keep that secret. I swept it under the rug, as she said. Right? So I was just, trying to elongate on what she added about, sweeping stuff under the rug, not saying anything, because it was taboo to talk about that. Still is taboo. Mm-hmm. Right?
So what are the things, to look out for? What are the signs of, how do you know that maybe somebody's being abused or a person who could be a perpetrator?
I was told I went from being a happy child to a very angry child. So if you see change in behavioral patterns, you want to know what's wrong with the child. Don't just say, well, you're just being bad, or no child is born bad. Something went wrong. So it's your responsibility as a caregiver, parent. What is going on with my child? My child was happy yesterday. Today they're angry and troublesome. You don't go from being happy to troublesome, like a snap of a finger, and that's what happened to me. So look for behavioral problems, nightmares, stuff like that.
Yeah, and then now, how do you, let's say, pass the microphone to someone else. Now, when if you have a person around, or you have people around, what are the things to watch out for? For example, for yourself, if you're in an environment or you have children or something, what are the things you're going to look out for that makes you start thinking or start suspecting that could anything happen? Do you understand the question?
I speak from my experience as a journalist and working with young people. We're always aware of how we look at we call them contributors. See, if it's under the child is under 16, then we need to always be careful. Even if you go into the toilet, you need to have a chaperone, somebody who has a license to go with you wherever you're going. So we have been told to listen to them and find out, is there anything they're afraid of? And even if you're coming from the toilet, the same person that we paid, we need to know if anything happened. So yeah, by listening to them, and sometimes this is something that is not right, we have to report. We have to go to child protection and speak to them, and they can analyze maybe that child is in danger or something.
Like how Jennifer pointed out, in certain communities, when does admiration, pleasantries, when does it cross the line?
Admiration, and anyone can admire you, anyone can give you gifts, but it all depends. For example, I worked with a young girl. She was very violent and abusive to support workers and coaches and mentors. But we all at the time did not understand why she flares up at every given opportunity. Nobody understood it until I sat down with her, went a little extra mile. And this admiration came when she was a little child. Her father, if I say it, her mom divorced her dad and then got married to another man, right? Is that clear? So that would be a stepfather, if that's okay. So this man lived with her mother and consistently admired her, which it's normal for a daddy to do for her little girl. So she took that as normal, bought gifts, and yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Now, I want you or anyone who understands or has something to say, as in, like when somebody say they are admiring somebody or they are praising a woman, or when does it cross the line? Do you have an idea? How do you know that it's become too much to start suspecting that this is off?
I would say that when admiration or praises start to cross the line is when the person's personal space is being invaded. So I would say touching or being overly close to the person can sometimes be interpreted as that as well. But in a case where it's non-physical, I would say if it's just overbearing, then it would cause me to have concerns.
Yeah, can I just say that it crosses the line when you say it crosses. It's when you feel uncomfortable, period. That's what it is. So your own level of comfortability may be fine. I personally don't like shaking hands. I personally, that's me. But if it's somebody I know, then I'm quite cordial and I would more likely give them a gentle hug. But some people don't like that crossing, especially certain women of certain ethnicities and from certain backgrounds or certain religious denominations don't allow you to enter into that space. Yeah. So whatever makes you personally feel uncomfortable is when it has crossed the line. Yeah. If I can just add to that, when it comes to children, sometimes our enemies are right in front of us. Sometimes our abusers are right in front of us. It might be stepfathers, it might be stepmothers, it might be house helps. I was discussing online on a forum, and the large percentage of African men's first sexual experiences are with their house helps. And a lot of the girls' first sexual experiences are with abusers within the family. So you look at these patterns of behavior and think, how can we curb them? The other thing is groomers. Groomers are a lot more cleverer than we would ever anticipate. It's one of the reasons why I've campaigned for the definitions of rape to be the same across all countries in Europe. Rape should be defined in Europe, as it is in Germany, as it is in France. Abuse should be defined as it is in England, as it is in Germany, as it is in France, as it is in Spain. There shouldn't be the opportunity for paedophiles to move to a new country, a new area, because if I touch a girl here and I'm not violent with her and I penetrate her and she's under 13, it won't be considered as rape. But in this country, it's considered automatically a statutory rape. The paedophiles will just go to certain countries for periods, commit their offences, and go back to where there are their places of residence. So my point on what you said about when it crosses the line is when you feel uncomfortable. And then the other thing is, sometimes our abusers are in plain sight. It's difficult to analyse risk. But number one, you should know where your children are going. But in today's digital world, how many of you have children? If you just raise your hands. How many of you have younger siblings? How many of you, as we heard yesterday with my sister, have siblings that have apps on their phone? How many of you let your children charge their phones by themselves overnight? You should be getting your phones from your children. You should know what apps your children have on their phones. You should give your children internet awareness, safety awareness. You don't take your picture and send to anybody, even if you like them. That picture stays out there forever. That picture could be changed. That picture could be augmented. So you've got to teach your children, one, to value themselves, value their space. Also have values within their own sphere of friends. Because as you know, and I know, well, I grew up and I had friends that were doing some craziness. And today, what a teenager did at the age of 12 in my day is very different from what they're doing today. So we really, really have to make them aware of risk. And that could be in the home, that could be in the church, that could be in the mosque. And as Yvette quite rightly said, if your child is going to do an activity, you want to make sure that there are safeguarding procedures there, that everybody there has been trained with regards to safeguarding. You want to know that they have had their DBS checks. It's so common in our community for things to be arranged. And bring your child. We're going to have a children's activity. Okay, fine. I'm the mum that will say, okay, who's the safeguarding officer in that activity? But not everybody knows to do that. We're all very trusting. It's something that is of deep concern.
Yeah, thank you.
Speaking on the subject of allowing people to touch you and so forth, and when to stop and so forth, I want to go a bit back from that just slightly and just talk about my own experience in the sense of how I dress and how I put myself out there. I've been accustomed many times at work, outside of work, and many of the men who have done it have said, oh, it's because how friendly you are, what you wear, you're enticing me to do that to you. No one has the right to touch you. Okay, I don't think I could walk down the street naked and say, don't touch me. But at the same time, I have the right to say that. I didn't give you permission to touch me. I wear what I want to wear, how I want to wear it. Now, if I gave you permission to touch me, that's okay then. That's fine. I'm a consenting adult. But when you don't say it's okay and someone does it, that's where the problem is. I own who I am. I wear what I want. I give no one permission to touch me, and that's what's really important.
Thank you. You have something to add? No. I understand. Okay. Now, going by what everyone has said, personally, like I said, when I was working in the hospital in Nigeria, these are things that happened. There was one incident where one of the female doctors, she was in the theater. There was an operation going on. And the medical director, who was about 60 years or so, was pulling the bra. Was pulling it and making that sound by, and all the men in the theater were laughing. This girl broke down. But this is Nigeria. So these are things that happen at the place of work. Sometimes you are, you're confused. You don't know whether to leave the job or to continue. Throw some more light on, legally, I know that we're in UK, but what of women in Africa? What of women in those areas that have not been really, well civilized, as in legally have backing?
Now, there are some countries that you'll be aware of that don't have sufficient legal protection to ensure that women and girls are protected from sexual abuse and violence. Now, even though they may not have the specific labour laws or employment rights necessary to protect the women and girls, most countries are signed up to international treaties by which they are obligated to put into place effective measures that protect women and girls from abuse. Now, apart from there being the issue of having specific legislation around labour rights, you have legislation obviously in the UK that's well-rounded and, well, I was going to say, as a result of European legislation, reinforced. But on the African continent and in some parts of the Asian world and South America's labour rights and equal, let's say, equality legislation is not so robust. And even when it's robust, it is not properly enforced. So, for example, in Nigeria, the example you gave, we actually have legislation. But the sad thing is it enforced? Who is going to come down on the director of a private clinic and tell him that he must not pull his staff member's bra strap? Is she going to have the confidence or the money, the resources to sue him? So unless the state itself, number one, enforces its national legislation, number two, adheres to the international treaties that it signed up to try and ensure that it's on the track to make sure that there's protection for the women and girls in their country, it's difficult. We were recently citing Sierra Leone at the House of Commons, where it's wholly deficient of specific legislation to protect girls from FGM, which is a form of silence, which is a form of violence, which is also a form of sexual abuse, because it's dealing with the removal of a female's private parts. And it's also to do with control, which again, all forms of abuse are to do with control. We saw that there was no legislation there, but there's urgent need for national countries to adhere to their local legislation, put in place robust steps to ensure there's proper enforcement of that legislation and adherence to international treaties.
Okay, thank you. Going back to children and sexual abuse with children, how can parents, apart from the digital awareness and stuff, how can parents protect their children practically? What are they specifically to?